I always thought if my marriage ended, it'd be because of my filthy socks, not my wife's filthy secret. My name is Pierce Eldrow, and I run a small tech startup that specializes in security software. Nothing glamorous. We write code that keeps small businesses from getting hacked. It pays the bills and keeps me busy enough that I don't notice when my wife starts working late every night. The first crack in my perfect little world came on a Tuesday evening in October. I'd wrapped up early, hoping to surprise Kiera with takeout from that Italian place she loves. The house felt different when I walked in. Too quiet, too clean, like someone had been scrubbing away evidence. "Kiera?" I called out, setting the bags on the kitchen counter. Her voice drifted from upstairs, tense and hushed. "Just a minute, honey." "Work call." I glanced at my watch. 8:30. She'd been pulling these late calls for weeks now, always claiming it was the Morrison case or some other urgent matter at her law firm. Kiera worked for Kellis and Associates, one of those old money firms where the partners still wore pocket watches and treated associates like indentured servants. Something crunched under my foot. A wine glass, expensive crystal, hidden behind the kitchen island. Strange. Kiera never drank alone, and we hadn't opened wine the night before. I climbed the stairs, following the sound of her voice. The bedroom door was cracked, and through the gap I could see her pacing by the window, phone pressed to her ear. "No, we can't keep doing this," she was saying. "Pierce is getting suspicious. Last night was too close." My hand froze on the banister. Pierce is getting suspicious? Of what? I know. But we need to be smarter about this. Meet me at the usual place tomorrow. We'll figure it out then. The usual place. Tomorrow. We'll figure it out. I backed down the stairs, my mind racing. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was work. Maybe she was planning a surprise party or dealing with some client confidentiality issue. But the wine glass, the hushed tone, the way she'd said my name like I was the problem, it all added up to something I didn't want to believe. The takeout sat cooling on the counter as I rifled through the mail pile, looking for anything unusual. Bills, advertisements, a credit card statement. I opened the statement, scanning the charges. Most were normal. Grocery store, gas station, her favorite coffee shop. But there, 3 days ago, the Grandview Hotel, room service charge, $400. The Grandview was downtown, 20 minutes from her office. Why would she need a hotel room in her own city? "Sorry about that," Kiera said, appearing at the bottom of the stairs. She looked perfect, as always. Blonde hair pulled back in a neat bun, makeup still flawless despite the long day. "Morrison case is heating up. You know how it is?" "Sure," I said, holding up the takeout bags. "Brought dinner." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You're sweet. I'm starving." We ate in relative silence, making small talk about my day, her case, the weather, normal married couple conversation, but I kept thinking about that phone call, that hotel charge, the way she wouldn't quite meet my eyes. After dinner, she excused herself for a shower. I waited until I heard the water running, then grabbed her phone from the kitchen counter. It was password protected, but I knew the code, our anniversary date. She'd never changed it. The text messages made my stomach drop. "Last night was incredible. Can't wait for the next round. R. Same here, but we need to be careful. Talk tomorrow. You're worth the risk, beautiful. Always have been. R. Who was R? I scrolled up, reading weeks of messages. Plans to meet, complaints about me, intimate details that made me want to throw the phone against the wall. But one name kept appearing. Rafe. Rafe Kellis, her boss. The senior partner at Kellis and Associates, the man who'd hired her straight out of law school 5 years ago. Married, 2 kids, drives a Ferrari, and lives in a penthouse downtown. The shower was still running. I took photos of the messages with my own phone, then deleted the evidence of my snooping. By the time Kiera emerged from the bathroom, I was sitting on the couch, laptop open, pretending to work. "I'm exhausted," she said, kissing the top of my head. "Going to turn in early." "Good idea. Big day tomorrow?" She paused, and I could feel her studying my face. "Yeah, big day." That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling while she slept beside me. 5 years of marriage, 7 years together total. We'd met in college, dated through law school and my computer science program, built what I thought was a solid life together. We talked about kids, about buying a bigger house, about growing old together, and she was throwing it all away for Rafe Kellis. I could confront her, demand an explanation, beg her to work things out. That's what the old Pierce would have done, the trusting, naive Pierce who believed his wife when she said she was working late. But the new Pierce, the one who'd spent the night reading her intimate messages to another man, had a different plan. If Kiera wanted to play games, I'd show her how the game was really played. The next morning, she left for work at her usual time, claiming she had an early meeting. I waited 30 minutes, then drove to the Kellis and Associates building downtown. The parking garage was dim and nearly empty at 8:30 in the morning. I found Rafe's Ferrari on the executive level. License plate Rafe 1, because apparently subtlety wasn't his strong suit. I parked my Honda Civic 2 spaces away and waited. At 9:15, he appeared. Rafe Kellis in the flesh, tall, silver-haired, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my car. He was talking on his phone, laughing about something, completely oblivious to the world around him. I started my engine and backed out slowly, timing it perfectly. My rear bumper connected with his front fender with a satisfying crunch. "What the hell?" Rafe shouted, jumping out of his car. I got out too, putting on my best confused husband act. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry, I didn't see you there. The mirrors in this garage are terrible." He was examining the damage, a small dent and some scraped paint. Nothing major, but enough to ruin his morning. "Do you have insurance?" Of course. Let me get my information." I fumbled in my wallet, taking my time. "You know, you look familiar. Do I know you from somewhere?" "I don't think so," he said, but I caught the way his eyes narrowed slightly. "Rafe Kellis, right? My wife works for you, Kiera Eldrow." His face went pale. "Kiera's your husband?" "That's me, Pierce Eldrow." I handed him my insurance card with a smile. Small world, isn't it? We exchanged information in tense silence. Before getting back in my car, I leaned close enough that only he could hear me. "Watch your back, Rafe. She's not worth it." I drove away, leaving him standing in the garage with my insurance card in one hand and a very worried expression on his face. The rest of the day passed in a blur of normal activities. Meetings with clients, code reviews, lunch with my team. But underneath it all, I was planning. Kiera thought she was smart, sneaking around behind my back, but she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated me. That evening, she came home later than usual, claiming the Morrison case had exploded and she'd been putting out fires all day. She seemed nervous, distracted, checking her phone more often than normal. "Everything okay?" I asked over dinner. "Fine. Just work stress. You know how it is." "Maybe you should take a vacation. We could go somewhere nice, just the two of us. Reconnect." She looked at me like I'd suggested we rob a bank. "Pierce, I can't just take time off right now. This case is too important." "More important than our marriage?" The question hung in the air between us. She set down her fork and studied my face. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. I just miss spending time with my wife." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Soon, okay? Once this case settles, things will go back to normal." Normal. Right. After dinner, I excused myself to check email and went to my home office. 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "We need to talk. Coffee tomorrow, 10 a.m., Starbucks on 5th Street. Come alone." M? I stared at the message, trying to figure out who would want to meet me. Then it hit me, Mona. Kiera's best friend from law school, the one who'd been her maid of honor at our wedding. They'd been inseparable for years, sharing everything from career advice to weekend shopping trips. If anyone knew what Kiera was up to, it would be Mona. I texted back, "I'll be there." The next morning, I told Kiera I had a client meeting downtown and left the house early. The Starbucks was busy with the morning rush, but I spotted Mona immediately. Tall, red-haired, wearing a designer suit that screamed successful attorney. She was sitting in a corner booth, nursing a latte and checking her phone. "Pierce," she said as I approached. "Thanks for coming." I sat down across from her, studying her face. Mona had always been hard to read, one of those people who kept their cards close to their chest. But today, she looked worried. "What's this about, Mona?" She glanced around the coffee shop, then leaned forward. "Kiera's planning something big, and I thought you should know." My heart started pounding. "What kind of something?" She's been asking questions about divorce law, asset protection, how to prove emotional distress. She's also been meeting with a private investigator, trying to dig up dirt on you. The coffee in my mouth turned bitter. Dirt on me? What kind of dirt? Anything she can use in court. Financial impropriety, infidelity, substance abuse. She's desperate, Pierce. Desperate people do stupid things. I set my cup down carefully, trying to process what she was telling me. "Why are you telling me this? You're her best friend." Mona's laugh was sharp and bitter. "Best friend." "Right. You want to know what kind of best friend Kiera is. 3 years ago, I was up for partner at my firm. Had the votes, had the support, had everything lined up. Then Kiera swooped in and stole the Morrison case right out from under me, told the client I was inexperienced, unreliable, cost me the partnership, and nearly destroyed my career. I had no idea. Of course you didn't. Kiera's very good at managing her image. But I've been waiting for the right moment to return the favor. And when I found out about her little affair with Rafe, she smiled coldly. Well, let's just say the enemy of my enemy is my friend. She reached into her purse and pulled out a manila envelope. Photos, hotel receipts, phone records, everything you need to prove she's been cheating. But Pierce, she grabbed my wrist as I reached for the envelope. Don't just use this to defend yourself. Use it to destroy her. I took the envelope, feeling its weight in my hands. Inside was enough evidence to end Kiera's career, her relationship with Rafe, and any chance she had of taking me for half of everything in a divorce. Why help me? I asked. Because Kiera Eldrow has been skating through life, using people and throwing them away when she's done. It's time someone showed her what that feels like. I left the coffee shop with the envelope tucked under my arm and a new understanding of just how deep the betrayal went. Kiera wasn't just cheating on me, she was actively plotting to destroy me in court while playing the victim, but she'd made one crucial error in judgment. She'd declared war on the wrong man. The envelope from Mona sat on my desk like a loaded weapon, its contents spread across my monitor in high-definition betrayal. Hotel receipts dating back 6 months, photos of Kiera and Rafe entering and leaving the Grandview, phone records showing hundreds of calls and texts between them, often late at night when she was supposedly working. But the most damaging evidence was a recording Mona had made during one of their girls' nights out. Kiera's voice, slightly slurred from wine, complaining about me to her friend. Pierce is so naive. It's almost pathetic. He actually believes I'm working late every night. God, Mona, you should see his face when I tell him about the Morrison case. He just nods and smiles like a good little husband. What about the money? Mona's voice on the recording. His little tech company is worth more than he realizes. The patents alone could set me up for life, and with Rafe's connections, I could land a partnership at any firm in the city. I just need to time this right. Make Pierce look like the bad guy so I get everything in the settlement. And if he fights back? Kiera's laugh was cold and calculating. Pierce? Fight back? Please. He's a computer nerd who thinks the worst thing you can do to someone is give them a bad Yelp review. He'll roll over and take whatever I give him. I turned off the recording and sat back in my chair. A computer nerd who thinks the worst thing you can do is give someone a bad Yelp review. We'd see about that. My phone buzzed with a text from Sam Rodriguez, my best friend since college and the owner of a boxing gym downtown. Drinks tonight? You sound like you need them. I'd called Sam the night before, giving him the basic outline of what was happening. He'd listened without judgment, the way good friends do, and offered to help however he could. Meet me at Murphy's at 7, I texted back. Murphy's was a dive bar near Sam's gym, the kind of place where nobody asked questions and everybody minded their own business. I found Sam at a corner table, 2 beers already waiting. You look terrible, he said by way of greeting. Thanks. Really what I needed to hear. Sam had been a semi-professional boxer before a shoulder injury ended his career and pushed him into gym ownership. He was built like a refrigerator and had the kind of street smarts that came from growing up in a rough neighborhood. If I was going to war with Kiera, I needed someone like Sam in my corner. So what's the plan? He asked after I'd filled him in on the details. I'm not sure yet. Part of me wants to confront her, lay all the evidence on the table and see what she says. And the other part? The other part wants to make her pay for every lie, every betrayal, every night she came home and kissed me after being with him. Sam nodded slowly. I get it, but you need to be smart about this. Kiera's a lawyer. She knows how to play the system. If you go in guns blazing, she'll twist it around and make you look like the villain. So what do you suggest? Hit her where she lives. Her reputation, her career, her precious image. Make it so that even if she wins in court, she loses everything that matters to her. Over the next hour, we outlined a strategy. Nothing illegal, nothing that would land me in jail, but calculated moves designed to expose Kiera's true nature to the world. Sam knew people, gym members who worked in media, construction, city government, information brokers who could spread rumors faster than wildfire. First thing, Sam said, you need to protect yourself. Move money, secure assets, document everything. She's probably already started, so you're playing catch-up. He was right. The next morning, I called my lawyer, not the family attorney Kiera and I had used to write our wills, but a divorce specialist named Carson Mills, who came highly recommended and had no connection to Kellis and Associates. Carson was everything you'd want in a lawyer facing off against other lawyers, sharp, ruthless, and completely without sentiment. His office was Spartanly decorated, just law books and a few framed degrees on the wall. Your wife's been busy, he said after reviewing my case. She filed preliminary paperwork yesterday, claiming irreconcilable differences and requesting temporary spousal support. She's also frozen your joint accounts pending asset evaluation. She what? Cleaned you out, basically. Left just enough to avoid criminal charges, but took everything else. Your business accounts are still safe, but any shared assets are locked up tight. I felt a surge of rage so intense it made my hands shake. She'd been planning this for months, maybe longer, setting me up while playing the loving wife at home. What are my options? Carson smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. We fight fire with fire. I've reviewed the evidence your friend provided. It's solid gold. Adultery, financial planning to defraud a spouse, conspiracy to commit perjury if she tries to claim you were abusive. We can destroy her in court. How long will it take? Depends on how dirty she wants to play. Could be 6 months, could be 2 years, but Pierce, he leaned forward. Court is just the legal battle. The real war is fought in public opinion. If you want to truly win this, you need to think bigger than just a divorce settlement. That afternoon, I started phase 1 of my counterattack. I'd always been good with computers, but I'd never used those skills for anything more aggressive than debugging code. Time to change that. Kiera's social media accounts were easy to access. She used the same password for everything, a combination of her maiden name and birthday that she'd never bothered to change. Her Instagram was full of carefully curated photos showing our perfect marriage. But I noticed something interesting in the metadata. Several photos supposedly taken at work events were actually taken at the Grandview Hotel. Others showed her wearing jewelry I'd never seen before, expensive pieces that definitely weren't in our budget. I downloaded everything, creating a timeline that would make any investigator proud. Then I started working on her professional accounts. Kiera was sloppy with digital security, probably figuring that nobody would ever bother to look. She was wrong. Her work email contained a treasure trove of personal messages mixed in with legitimate business. Complaints about me to colleagues, planning sessions with Rafe about their future together, even discussions about which of our mutual friends they could count on to take their side in the divorce. But the most damaging find was a draft email she'd never sent, apparently written during one of her lunch meetings with Rafe. Darling, I can't wait until this is all over, and we can be together properly. Pierce is starting to ask questions, but he's too trusting to really dig deep. By Christmas, I'll be free of him, and we can start our real life together. The partnership at Morrison & Associates is practically guaranteed once I bring them the Eldrow patents. They're worth millions, and Pierce has no idea. He'll sign them over in the settlement just to avoid a messy court battle. Then we can buy that house in the Hamptons you showed me and forget this whole messy chapter ever happened. The Eldrow patents. My patents. The security software I'd developed over 5 years of 18-hour days and weekend work sessions. She was planning to steal my life's work and use it to fund her new life with Rafe. I printed the email and added it to my growing file of evidence. Then I did something that would have horrified the old Pierce. I forwarded copies of the most damaging messages to an anonymous email account I'd created, along with a note. Thought you might find this interesting. More to come. The recipient was Jake Morrison, the gossip blogger who ran City Confidential, a scandal sheet that specialized in exposing the private lives of lawyers, politicians, and other public figures. Jake had been trying to get dirt on the Kellis firm for years, ever since they'd successfully sued him for libel over a story about one of their clients. I didn't send everything, not yet, just enough to whet his appetite and establish my credibility as a source. That evening, Kiera came home later than usual, looking frazzled and angry. She'd obviously had a difficult day, probably dealing with the fallout from whatever moves Carson had made on my behalf. "We need to talk," she said, dropping her purse by the door. "Sure. How was work?" She studied my face, looking for signs that I knew what was happening. I kept my expression neutral, curious but not suspicious. "Pierce, I think we should consider couples counseling. We've been growing apart lately, and I think it might help." Couples counseling. Right. Probably another delaying tactic while she finished positioning her pieces on the board. "That sounds like a good idea," I said. "I've been feeling distant too. Maybe we can work through whatever's been bothering us." She relaxed slightly, apparently believing that I was still the naive husband she could manipulate. "I'll make some calls tomorrow, find someone who specializes in communication issues." "Great. In the meantime, maybe we could spend more time together. I feel like I hardly see you anymore." "I know, this case has been consuming my life, but it should wrap up soon, and then things can get back to normal." Normal. There was that word again. After she went to bed, I sat in my office reviewing the day's intelligence gathering. Carson had filed counter motions that would tie up her legal maneuvering for weeks. Mona had promised to keep feeding me information from inside Kiera's circle, and Jake Morrison had already responded to my anonymous email, asking for more details and promising complete confidentiality for his source. The pieces were falling into place, but I needed something bigger, something that would expose Kiera's true nature to everyone who mattered. Her colleagues, her friends, her family, they all needed to see what she really was. That's when I remembered the law firm's annual charity gala. It was scheduled for the following weekend, a black tie affair where all the city's legal elite would gather to congratulate themselves on their generosity while networking and gossiping. Kiera had been looking forward to it for months, planning to wear a new dress and debut some expensive jewelry that I now realized Rafe had probably bought for her. The gala would be perfect. A room full of her peers, an open bar to loosen tongues, and plenty of opportunities for public humiliation. All I needed was a way to get inside. I called Sam. "How would you like to crash a fancy lawyer party?" I asked. "Sounds like fun. What did you have in mind?" Time to show Kiera that her naive little husband isn't as harmless as she thinks. The next few days passed in a blur of preparation. Carson filed more legal motions, each one designed to delay Kiera's plans and force her to reveal more of her strategy. Mona provided regular updates on Kiera's growing panic as her carefully laid plans started to unravel. And I worked on the technical aspects of what I was starting to think of as Operation Exposure. The night before the gala, Kiera was more nervous than I'd ever seen her. She tried on her dress 3 times, changed her jewelry twice, and spent an hour on her makeup. "You look beautiful," I said, and meant it. Even knowing what I knew, even hating what she'd done to us, I could still appreciate the woman I'd fallen in love with 7 years ago. "Thank you," she said, but her smile was strained. "I just want everything to be perfect tonight. This gala is important for my career." "I'm sure it will be memorable." She gave me a sharp look, but I was already walking away, humming softly to myself. Tomorrow night, Kiera Eldrow was going to get exactly what she deserved. The Grandview Hotel ballroom was exactly what you'd expect from a lawyer's charity gala. Crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, and enough pretension to choke a horse. I watched from across the street as the city's legal elite filed through the entrance. The men in identical black tuxedos, the women in designer gowns that cost more than most people's cars. Kiera arrived fashionably late, stepping out of a black sedan that I recognized as Rafe's personal car. She looked stunning in a midnight blue dress that hugged her curves perfectly, her blonde hair swept up in an elegant chignon. Diamond earrings caught the light as she moved, definitely not from our jewelry collection. Rafe emerged from the driver's side, adjusting his bow tie and scanning the crowd with the confidence of a man who owned half the city. He offered Kiera his arm, and they walked into the hotel together like the power couple they imagined themselves to be. "You sure about this?" Sam asked from the passenger seat of my Honda. He was wearing a rented tux that stretched tight across his shoulders, looking like a bodyguard trying to blend in at a wedding. "Too late to back out now," I said, checking my phone one more time. Everything was ready. The anonymous tip I'd sent to Jake Morrison, the USB drive in my jacket pocket, the backup plan if things went sideways. We waited 15 minutes, then made our entrance. The hotel lobby was buzzing with activity, but nobody paid attention to 2 more men in tuxedos heading toward the ballroom. I'd done my homework. The charity gala was a public event, technically open to anyone willing to pay the admission fee. The fact that I'd paid that fee using an anonymous donation made through a shell company was just good planning. The ballroom was even more impressive from inside, with round tables surrounding a small stage where the evening's speakers would make their presentations. A full bar dominated one wall, already crowded with lawyers getting their liquid courage for the night's networking battles. I spotted Kiera immediately. She was holding court at a table near the front, surrounded by her colleagues from Kellis and Associates. Rafe was working the room, glad-handing potential clients and basking in the attention that came with being a senior partner at one of the city's most prestigious firms. "There," I said to Sam, nodding toward an empty table near the back. "We can see everything from there." We settled in, ordered drinks from a passing waiter, and watched the show. It was fascinating in a way, seeing Kiera in her natural habitat, playing the role of successful attorney and devoted wife. She'd mentioned me twice in the first 10 minutes, telling anyone who would listen about her supportive husband who was so understanding about her demanding career. The irony was almost too much to bear. "Ladies and gentlemen," the evening's host announced from the stage, "if you could please take your seats, we'll begin tonight's program." The crowd settled down as a parade of speakers took the stage. Judges, politicians, senior partners from various firms. Each one delivered carefully crafted remarks about the importance of legal aid, pro bono work, and giving back to the community. Standard charity gala fare, designed to make everyone feel good about themselves while opening their wallets. But I wasn't paying attention to the speeches. I was watching Kiera, studying her body language, timing my move for maximum impact. The opportunity came during the dinner service, when the crowd was relaxed and the wine had been flowing freely. The evening's final speaker, a federal judge who'd been droning on about judicial reform, wrapped up his remarks and invited anyone else to share their thoughts about the legal profession's commitment to justice. I stood up. "If I could have just a moment," I said, my voice carrying clearly across the suddenly quiet ballroom. Heads turned toward me, including Kiera's. Her face went white as she recognized me, then flushed red with anger and embarrassment. Rafe half rose from his seat, as if he was considering having me physically removed. "My name is Pierce Eldrow," I continued, walking slowly toward the front of the room. "Some of you may know my wife, Kiera, who works at Kellis & Associates. I wanted to share a few thoughts about the legal profession's commitment to honesty and integrity." The crowd was completely silent now, sensing drama, but not sure what kind. Kiera was frantically shaking her head, mouthing "stop" and "sit down," but I ignored her. "You see, I used to believe that lawyers were fundamentally honest people, officers of the court, bound by ethics and professional standards. I thought that when a lawyer gave you their word, you could trust it completely." I reached the front of the room and turned to face the crowd, making eye contact with as many people as possible. "But recently, I've learned some interesting things about the legal profession. For instance, did you know that some lawyers will lie to their own spouses about working late when they're actually conducting business meetings at the Grandview Hotel? Room 412, to be specific?" A murmur ran through the crowd. Kiera was on her feet now, her face a mask of fury and panic. Rafe looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. "And did you know that some lawyers will steal their spouse's intellectual property, patents worth millions of dollars, and plan to use them as bargaining chips in divorce proceedings, all while claiming to love and support that spouse?" The murmur became a buzz of excited conversation. I could see people pulling out their phones, some probably texting friends, others likely recording video of the unfolding drama. But here's the most interesting thing I've learned," I said, raising my voice to be heard over the crowd. "Some lawyers will conspire with their colleagues to destroy innocent people's reputations, all while playing the victim themselves. They'll hire private investigators, freeze bank accounts, and plan elaborate character assassinations, all while pretending to be the injured party." Kiera was pushing through the crowd toward me now, her face twisted with rage. "Pierce, stop this right now. You're embarrassing yourself." "Am I?" I pulled the USB drive from my pocket and held it up. "Because I have hotel receipts, phone records, email conversations, and recorded admissions that tell a very different story. Would anyone like to see them?" That's when Rafe made his move. He lunged toward me, probably planning to grab the USB drive or shut me up before I could do more damage. But Sam was ready for him. My friend stepped smoothly between us, his massive frame blocking Rafe's path. "Easy there, partner," Sam said in a voice that carried clearly across the room. "Let the man finish his speech." Rafe tried to push past him, but Sam's hand settled on his shoulder with unmistakable firmness. "I said easy." Security was moving toward us now, but the damage was already done. Half the room was filming with their phones, the other half was buzzing with excited conversation, and everyone was staring at Kiera and Rafe with expressions ranging from shock to disgust to barely concealed glee. "The truth has a way of coming out," I said as security guards approached. "And when it does, everyone gets to see who people really are." I handed the USB drive to the nearest person, a woman I recognized as a reporter for the city's legal newspaper, then allowed security to escort me toward the exit. Sam followed, grinning like he'd just won the lottery. "That was beautiful," he said as we walked through the lobby. "You see her face when you mentioned room 412? I had seen it. The exact moment when Kiera realized that I knew everything, that her carefully constructed lies had crumbled in front of everyone who mattered in her professional world, but we weren't done yet. The next morning, Jake Morrison's City Confidential blog exploded with the story. "Lawyer's wife exposes affair at charity gala" was the headline, followed by a detailed account of the previous night's drama. The USB drive I'd given to the reporter contained just enough evidence to corroborate my claims without revealing all my cards. By noon, the story had been picked up by 3 other local news outlets and was trending on social media. Room 402 became a hashtag, with people sharing their own stories of legal profession scandals and betrayals. Kiera's phone was ringing constantly. I could hear it through the bedroom door where she'd locked herself after coming home from what I assumed was a very uncomfortable morning at the office. Around 2 p.m., she finally emerged, looking like she'd aged 10 years overnight. Her makeup was smeared, her hair was disheveled, and her eyes were red from crying. "We need to talk," she said. "Now you want to talk? Interesting timing." She sat down across from me at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd shared thousands of meals over the years. "Pierce, I know how this looks, but you don't understand the whole situation." "Really? Enlighten me. Rafe and I, it's complicated. We have history from before I met you. When he hired me at the firm, there were still feelings there, but we kept things professional. The affair only started recently, and it wasn't supposed to mean anything. I stared at her, amazed by her ability to lie even when caught red-handed. Wasn't supposed to mean anything. Kiera, you were planning to steal my patents and use them to fund your new life with him. Her face crumpled. How do you know about that? I know about everything. The hotel meetings, the private investigator, the plan to paint me as an abusive husband. I know about the jewelry he bought you, the promises he made, the partnership at Morrison & Associates. I even know about your little girl's night confession to Mona about how naive and pathetic I am. She buried her face in her hands. Pierce, I'm sorry. I never meant for it to go this far. It got out of control. Got out of control? You've been planning this for months, maybe years. You froze our accounts, hired lawyers, and set me up to be destroyed in court. That's not out of control. That's premeditated. What do you want from me? She asked, looking up with tears streaming down her face. You've already ruined my reputation, probably cost me my job. What more can you take? I leaned back in my chair, studying the woman I'd once loved more than anything in the world. I want you to understand what it feels like to be betrayed by someone you trust. I want you to know what it's like to have your life torn apart by someone who's supposed to protect you. And I want you to realize that actions have consequences. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. So what happens now? Now? Now you get to live with the choices you made. The legal proceedings will continue, but I think you'll find that your bargaining position has been significantly weakened. Your affair is public knowledge, your professional reputation is in shambles, and any sympathy you might have garnered as the wronged wife has evaporated. I stood up, looking down at the broken woman who had once been my partner in everything. And Kiera, this is just the beginning. You wanted to play games with my life, steal my work, destroy my reputation, but you made one crucial mistake. What's that? I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. You assumed I'd roll over and take it. You thought I was too naive, too trusting, too weak to fight back. But you forgot something important about computer nerds. What? We're really, really good at finding information, and once we have it, we're very creative about how we use it. I left her sitting at the kitchen table and went to my office to plan the next phase of my campaign, because despite what I'd told her, this wasn't just the beginning. This was barely even getting started. The fallout from the charity gala was everything I'd hoped for and more. By the end of the week, Kiera had been placed on administrative leave from Kellis and Associates, pending an internal investigation into her conduct. The local bar association had opened an ethics inquiry based on the evidence I'd provided through Jake Morrison's blog. And Rafe Kellis was facing his own professional crisis as clients began questioning his judgment and demanding reassignment of their cases. But I wasn't satisfied yet. Public humiliation was just the opening move in a much larger game. You're playing with fire, Carson warned during our meeting the following Monday. The gala stunt was brilliant theater, but it also painted a target on your back. Kiera's new lawyer is already claiming you orchestrated a campaign of harassment and emotional abuse. Let him claim whatever he wants. I have documentation for everything I've done, and none of it crosses any legal lines. Carson leaned back in his chair, studying me with the expression of a man who'd seen too many divorces turn ugly. Pierce, I've been doing this for 20 years, and I've learned that revenge is a luxury most people can't afford. It feels good in the moment, but it usually costs more than it's worth. This isn't about revenge, I said, though we both knew that wasn't entirely true. This is about justice. Kiera tried to destroy my life, steal my work, and paint me as an abuser. She deserves everything that's happening to her. Maybe. But what happens when you win? When the divorce is final? When she's lost everything? When her career is over? What then? I didn't have an answer for that, mainly because I hadn't thought much beyond the immediate satisfaction of watching Kiera's world crumble. The future, my future, was still an abstract concept, something to worry about after I'd finished settling accounts with my wife. That afternoon, Mona called with an update from inside Kiera's rapidly shrinking circle of allies. She's desperate, Mona reported, her voice carrying a note of satisfaction that made me slightly uncomfortable. Lost her job, lost most of her friends, and Rafe is distancing himself as fast as he can. Word is he's considering taking a sabbatical, maybe relocating to the firm's London office until this whole thing blows over. What about Kiera? Broke, basically. The legal fees are eating through her savings, and no firm in the city will touch her with a 10-foot pole. She's been calling everyone she knows, looking for work, but the story's spread too far. She's toxic. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt oddly empty, like a chess player who just realized that winning the game meant destroying the board. "There's something else," Mona continued. "She's been asking about you, wanting to know if you're seeing anyone, if you seem happy, if you've talked about reconciliation." Reconciliation? The word tasted bitter in my mouth. After everything she's done? Desperate people cling to desperate hopes. I think part of her still believes she can fix this, win you back, make everything go back to the way it was. But there was no going back. Too much had been said. Too much had been revealed. Too many bridges had been burned. Even if I could forgive Kiera's betrayal, which I couldn't, I'd never be able to trust her again. And without trust, what was the point? That evening, I was working late in my home office when I heard a car pull into the driveway. Through the window, I saw Kiera getting out of an unfamiliar sedan, probably a rental since her BMW had been repossessed the previous week. She looked terrible. Her hair was unkempt, her clothes were wrinkled, and she moved like a woman carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. She knocked on the front door, then used her key when I didn't answer immediately. I heard her footsteps in the hallway, then the soft sound of her voice calling my name. "Pierce, we need to talk." I found her in the living room, standing by the mantelpiece where our wedding photos used to be displayed. I'd removed them weeks ago, along with most other reminders of our marriage. "Hello, Kiera." She turned, and I was shocked by how much she'd changed in just a few weeks. The confident, polished lawyer I'd married was gone, replaced by a broken woman who looked like she hadn't slept in days. "I know you hate me," she said without preamble. "I know you have every right to hate me, but I need you to listen to me just this once." "I'm listening." She took a shaky breath. "I made terrible mistakes. I hurt you in ways that can't be forgiven. But Pierce, this has gone too far. I've lost everything. My job, my friends, my reputation. I can't even get work as a paralegal because everyone in the city knows what I did. And I'm asking you to stop. Please. I know I don't deserve mercy, but I'm begging you anyway. Call off whatever you have planned next. Let the divorce proceed quietly. Take whatever you want in the settlement. Just please stop destroying me." I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation or deception, but all I saw was genuine desperation, the look of someone who'd finally realized the true cost of their choices. "Why should I stop?" I asked. "You didn't show me any mercy when you were planning to steal my patents and destroy my reputation." "Because you're not me," she said simply. "You're better than I am. You always have been. The Pierce I married wouldn't keep kicking someone when they're down, even if they deserved it." She was right, and we both knew it. The old Pierce, the trusting, naive Pierce who believed in fairness and second chances, would have stopped already. He would have been satisfied with exposing the truth and moving on with his life. But the old Pierce was gone, burned away in the fire of betrayal and humiliation. What remained was harder, colder, more calculating, and he wasn't finished yet. "The Pierce you married was a fool," I said. "He believed in love and loyalty and happily ever after. He thought his wife would never betray him, never lie to him, never try to destroy him. But you taught me better, Kiera. You showed me that trust is weakness, that kindness is stupidity, that the only way to survive is to strike first and strike hard." Tears were streaming down her face now. "Pierce, please." "You want to know what I have planned next?" I interrupted. "Tomorrow morning, Jake Morrison is publishing a follow-up story. Hotel surveillance footage, financial records showing how you use marital assets to fund your affair, copies of the emails where you and Rafe planned to steal my intellectual property. By noon, every law firm in the state will know exactly what kind of person you are." Her knees buckled, and she had to grab the mantelpiece to keep from falling. "You can't. Please, Pierce, you can't. I'll never work again. I'll lose everything." "You already lost everything. You lost it the moment you decided to betray our marriage." "But I love you," she whispered, the words barely audible. "I know I have no right to say that. I know I destroyed any chance we had, but I do love you. I always have." I looked at her, really looked at her, and for a moment I saw the woman I'd fallen in love with 7 years ago. The brilliant law student who'd challenged me in debates, who'd laughed at my terrible jokes, who'd made me believe that I could be part of something bigger than myself. But that woman was gone, revealed to be nothing more than a carefully constructed facade. What remained was a stranger who'd worn my wife's face while plotting my destruction. "No," I said quietly. "You loved the idea of me. The stable, predictable husband who would support your career and never ask difficult questions. You loved having someone you could manipulate and control, but you never loved me, Kiera. If you had, you never could have done what you did." I walked toward the door, then stopped and looked back at her one last time. The house goes on the market next week. You have until Friday to collect whatever personal items you want to keep. After that, anything left behind goes to charity. Pierce, wait. But I was already gone, walking out of the house and leaving her alone with the wreckage of the life she'd chosen to destroy. The next morning, Jake Morrison's follow-up story broke like a tsunami across the city's legal community. The surveillance footage was particularly damaging, crystal-clear images of Kiera and Rafe entering and leaving hotel rooms, kissing in parking garages, holding hands in restaurant booths. The financial records showed a pattern of deception going back months, with marital assets being used to pay for jewelry, dinners, and weekend getaways. But the real bombshell was the email correspondence between Kiera and Rafe, planning to steal my patents and use them as leverage in the divorce. The legal community was small and incestuous. Everyone knew everyone, and professional reputations were everything. By revealing their plan to commit what amounted to intellectual property theft, I'd made them both pariahs. My phone rang constantly with calls from reporters, lawyers, and former colleagues wanting to know more details. I ignored most of them, but I did take a call from the senior partner at Morrison & Associates, the firm where Kiera had been promised a partnership. "Mr. Eldrow," he said, "I want to personally apologize for any role our firm might have played in this unfortunate situation. I can assure you that we had no knowledge of Ms. Eldrow's extracurricular activities when we discussed potential employment opportunities." "I appreciate that," I said, though I suspected he was lying. Law firms didn't make partnership offers to associates without doing extensive background checks. "I also want to assure you that any discussions about intellectual property transfer are completely off the table. We have no interest in acquiring assets through questionable means." Translation. They were cutting Kiera loose and making sure everyone knew they weren't involved in her schemes. By the end of the week, the story had spread beyond the local legal community. National legal publications picked it up, using it as an example of how personal scandals could destroy professional careers. A few law schools added it to their ethics curricula as a cautionary tale about maintaining professional boundaries. Kiera became a cautionary tale with a name and a face and a ruined life, and I was the one who'd ruined it. Carson was right. Revenge was a luxury I couldn't afford. But I'd already paid the price, and there was no going back now. The only question was how much further I was willing to go. The answer came to me as I sat in my empty house, surrounded by boxes and the echoes of a marriage that had never been as real as I'd thought. I pulled out my phone and started making calls. If Kiera thought this was rock bottom, she was about to learn how much deeper the hole could go. The coastal cabin had been in my family for 3 generations. A weathered structure perched on the cliffs overlooking the Atlantic, accessible only by a narrow dirt road that wound through pine forests and rocky outcroppings. My grandfather had built it as a retreat from the world, a place where a man could think clearly without the distractions of modern life. It seemed like the perfect place for final confrontations. I'd been planning this moment for weeks, ever since Kiera's desperate plea in our living room. The public humiliation, the professional destruction, the financial ruin, all of that had been satisfying in its own way, but it wasn't enough. I needed something more definitive, more final. I needed to close the book on this chapter of my life completely. The invitation I'd sent was simple and untraceable, delivered through anonymous email accounts to 3 specific recipients: Kiera, Rafe, and Mona. The message was identical in each case. "If you want to know the whole truth about what's been happening, meet me at the Eldrow cabin this Saturday at 8 p.m. Come alone. This is your only chance to set the record straight." I'd included GPS coordinates and a vague promise of evidence that will change everything. It was the kind of bait that desperate people couldn't resist, especially when they were drowning and grasping for any possible lifeline. I arrived at the cabin early Saturday afternoon, giving myself plenty of time to prepare. The building hadn't been used in months, and it smelled of dust and sea air. I opened the windows to let in the October breeze, started a fire in the stone fireplace, and set up my equipment. The cabin's isolation made it perfect for my purposes. No neighbors for miles, no cell phone coverage, no witnesses to whatever was about to happen. Just me, my laptop, a high-definition camera, and a satellite internet connection that would broadcast everything live to Jake Morrison's blog. The first to arrive was Rafe, his rental car struggling up the rutted dirt road as the sun set behind the pine trees. He looked haggard and nervous, constantly checking his phone despite the lack of signal. The scandal had aged him. His silver hair was unkempt, his expensive suit was wrinkled, and he moved like a man who'd forgotten how to be confident. "Pierce," he said as he climbed the cabin steps, "I wasn't sure you'd actually be here. Where else would I be?" He looked around nervously, taking in the remote location and the gathering darkness. What is this about? Your message mentioned evidence. Patience, Rafe. We're waiting for the others. Kiera arrived 20 minutes later, driving the same rental sedan she'd been using since her car was repossessed. She looked even worse than she had during our last confrontation. Thinner, paler, with the hollow-eyed look of someone who'd been surviving on coffee and desperation. Pierce, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Thank you for reaching out. I was hoping we could talk, maybe find a way to... Save it, I interrupted. We'll have plenty of time to talk once everyone's here. Mona was the last to arrive, her luxury sedan looking absurdly out of place on the rough mountain road. She emerged wearing designer clothes and an expression of barely concealed excitement, like someone attending a particularly juicy piece of theater. Well, well, she said, looking around at the assembled group. Isn't this cozy? The whole gang's here. I waited until all three were inside the cabin, then closed and locked the door behind them. The click of the deadbolt seemed to echo in the small space, and I saw Kiera flinch at the sound. Please sit, I said, gesturing to the mismatched furniture arranged around the fireplace. We have a lot to discuss. They took their seats reluctantly, the tension in the room thick enough to cut with a knife. Rafe and Kiera sat as far apart as possible, their affair apparently having cooled considerably under the heat of public scrutiny. Mona positioned herself where she could see everyone, her eyes bright with anticipation. I suppose you're wondering why I brought you all here, I began, settling into the chair that had been my grandfather's favorite. The truth is, I wanted to give you a chance to tell your side of the story, to explain yourselves, to maybe even apologize. Pierce, Kiera started. I've been trying to apologize for weeks. You won't return my calls, you won't see me. Because your apologies are worthless, I cut her off. You're not sorry for what you did. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry there were consequences. But you're not actually sorry for betraying our marriage, stealing my work, or trying to destroy my reputation. Rafe cleared his throat. Look, Pierce, I know this situation is complicated. But Kiera and I never meant for things to go as far as they did. It was supposed to be a simple business relationship that got out of hand. I laughed, a sound with no humor in it. A simple business relationship? Is that what you call conspiracy to commit intellectual property theft? That's not, Rafe began, but I held up my hand. Please, don't insult my intelligence. I have copies of every email, every text message, every phone conversation. I know about the partnership offer at Morrison & Associates, contingent on bringing them my patents. I know about the private investigator you hired to dig up dirt on me. I know about the plan to paint me as an abusive husband to improve your position in the divorce. The color drained from both their faces. They'd obviously hoped that some of their scheming had remained secret, that there might be a way to salvage something from the wreckage of their plans. But here's what's really interesting, I continued, turning to look at Mona. I also know who's been feeding me information all along, who's been helping me stay one step ahead of your moves, who's been orchestrating this whole beautiful disaster from behind the scenes. Mona's smile faltered slightly, but she tried to maintain her composure. I don't know what you mean. Really? Should I play the recording of our first conversation at Starbucks? The one where you admitted that you'd been waiting years for a chance to get revenge on Kiera for stealing the Morrison case and costing you your partnership? Kiera turned to stare at her best friend, confusion and dawning horror on her face. Mona, what is he talking about? Or maybe, I continued, I should share the emails where Mona provided me with copies of your private conversations, your legal strategies, even your therapy session notes. Did you know she's been recording your phone calls for months, Kiera? Every tearful confession, every desperate plan, every moment of weakness. She's been feeding it all to me. That's not true, Kiera whispered, but her voice lacked conviction. Mona finally dropped the pretense, her smile returning in full force. Oh, it's completely true, every word of it. But why? Kiera asked, tears starting to flow down her cheeks. You're my best friend. You've been my best friend for 10 years. Best friend? Mona laughed, a harsh sound that echoed off the cabin walls. Kiera, you destroyed my career. You stole my biggest client, sabotaged my partnership bid, and then acted like nothing happened. You've been using me as your personal therapist and gossip mill for years, never once considering that I might have my own agenda. So you decided to destroy my marriage? I decided to give you exactly what you deserved, and Pierce here was the perfect weapon to do it with. The room fell silent except for the crackling of the fire and the sound of Kiera's quiet sobbing. Rafe was staring at the floor, probably calculating how much worse this revelation made his own situation, and I was watching all of them, feeling a strange mixture of satisfaction and emptiness. The beautiful part, I said, breaking the silence, is that none of this required me to lie or fabricate evidence. Every piece of information I used against you came from your own actions, your own words, your own choices. I just amplified them. So what now? Rafe asked. You've destroyed our careers, our reputations, our lives. What more do you want? I walked over to my laptop and turned the screen so they could all see it. The browser was open to Jake Morrison's blog, showing a live video feed from the cabin. A chat window beside the video was scrolling rapidly with comments from viewers. What I want, I said, is for everyone to see exactly who you really are. No more lies, no more manipulation, no more carefully crafted public images. Just the truth. Kiera's eyes widened as she realized what was happening. You're broadcasting this? Live? To about 3,000 viewers and counting, including several reporters, legal bloggers, and members of the State Bar Association. This is your chance to tell your side of the story, to explain yourselves to the world. Isn't that what you wanted? Rafe jumped to his feet, his face flushed with anger. You can't do this. This is entrapment. It's harassment. It's justice, I replied calmly. You wanted to play games with people's lives, to use and manipulate and destroy. Well, now you get to face the consequences in front of an audience. Turn it off, Kiera screamed, lunging toward the laptop. Turn it off right now. I caught her wrist before she could reach the computer, holding her firmly but not roughly. Careful, Kiera. Wouldn't want the viewers to think I was the abusive one. She collapsed back into her chair, sobbing uncontrollably. Mona was laughing, apparently delighted by the chaos she'd helped create, and Rafe was pacing back and forth like a caged animal, looking for an escape that didn't exist. The door's locked, I said, reading his thoughts. The windows are too high to jump from safely, and even if you could get out, it's a long walk back to civilization through some very dark woods. I'd suggest you sit down and accept the situation. What do you want from us? He demanded. I want you to confess, all of it. The affair, the theft, the conspiracy, the lies. I want you to admit what you did and explain why you thought it was acceptable to destroy an innocent person's life for your own benefit. And if we don't, I shrugged, then you sit here in silence while 3,000 people watch you refuse to take responsibility for your actions. Either way, the truth comes out. For the next hour, the cabin became a confessional booth with a worldwide audience. Under the pressure of public scrutiny and their own guilt, the three of them began to turn on each other. Kiera blamed Rafe for manipulating her emotions and pressuring her into the affair. Rafe blamed Kiera for being willing to steal from her own husband. Mona blamed both of them for being selfish, entitled people who deserved everything that had happened to them. The comment stream on the blog was brutal. Viewers were dissecting every word, every gesture, every tear. Legal experts were weighing in on the potential criminal charges. Former clients were sharing their own stories of being manipulated or betrayed by the people on screen. As the night wore on, the three of them began to break down completely. Kiera admitted to years of lying and manipulation, not just with me, but with clients, colleagues, and friends. Rafe confessed to multiple affairs and unethical business practices that went far beyond his relationship with my wife. And Mona revealed the depth of her long-term campaign of revenge, including sabotaging other people's careers and relationships over the years. By midnight, they were emotionally exhausted, sitting in stunned silence as the full weight of their public confession settled over them. The viewer count had climbed to over 5,000, and the story was already being picked up by major news outlets. Well, I said finally, closing the laptop and ending the broadcast. I think that went well. Kiera looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. What happens now? Now? Now you get to live with the consequences of your choices. The legal proceedings will continue, but I think you'll find that your bargaining position has been significantly weakened. Your professional reputations are finished, your personal relationships are destroyed, and thanks to tonight's performance, you'll probably be facing criminal charges as well. I walked to the door and unlocked it, then stepped outside into the cold October air. Behind me, I could hear them starting to argue again, blame shifting and accusations flying as they tried to figure out how to salvage something from the wreckage of their lives. But I wasn't listening anymore. I stood on the cabin porch, looking out at the dark ocean and feeling empty. The revenge I'd planned so carefully, executed so thoroughly, had left me hollow inside. Kiera was right about one thing. The old Pierce wouldn't have done this. The old Pierce would have been satisfied with exposing the truth and moving on, but the old Pierce was gone, burned away in the fire of betrayal and humiliation. What remained was harder, colder, more calculating. And as I listened to the sound of my wife's sobs carrying on the night air, I wondered if the price of justice had been worth paying. A car door slammed behind me, then another. Engines started, headlights cut through the darkness, and gravel crunched under tires as my 3 guests fled back to whatever remained of their lives. I stayed on the porch until their taillights disappeared into the forest, then went back inside to bank the fire and close up the cabin. Tomorrow, I would drive back to the city and begin the process of rebuilding my life from the ashes of my marriage. But tonight, I stood in the empty cabin where my grandfather had taught me about honor and integrity, and wondered what he would think of the man his grandson had become. The fire crackled in the hearth, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows and carrying the salt smell of the ocean through the gaps in the old wood. I left the cabin door open as I walked to my car. Let the cold in, let the world see. If you're going to call a man a villain, at least give him a stage.